Hello everyone, this is Puka and welcome to another Pokemon TCG video. Today we're going to revisit a classic archetype and see if it can hold up against today's competition. This is going to be a Darkrai Hydreigon deck. This deck came to life last season when Dragons Exalted came out with a bang. Darkrai EX Hydreigon just seemed to be a wonderful combo, but eventually it got overpowered, but now we got some new tricks, and we'll see if this deck can actually work. So, just a refresher of what this deck is aiming to do. Hydreigon has the awesome ability Dark Trance, allows you to move around your darkness energy, very similar to Aromatisse's Fairy Transfer, but this is for darkness energy instead. So we're going to try to abuse that as much as possible. Now, it's a natural pair with Darkrai EX because Dark Cloak gives all of your Pokemon that have any darkness energy attached free retreat. So you can just move around freely with your Pokemon. With Darkrai and Hydreigon, just move your energy to the active, retreat for free, and bring up a new Pokemon. That's the basic concept here. Now, of course, we now have Yveltal EX as a better attacker than Darkrai. Evil Ball is a ridiculous attack, 20 plus 20 for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. It's pretty good in my book, and why Cyclone isn't too bad either. Now, one of the biggest problems for this deck is actually going to be one-hit knockouts, but we'll get to that in a little bit. First, let's take a look at some other stuff we have here. First one being this regular Yveltal. Now, we played two of these guys because he's probably going to be your lead-off attacker. It's just a big, basic Pokemon, only gives up one prize, and can also do a little bit of damage while getting some extra energy in play. This is going to allow us to build up tons of energy in play, and most decks actually do struggle to knock this out quickly, so it's just a nice lead-off Pokemon while we can set up. Another nice setup Pokemon we have here is Sableye. It just seems like he belongs in any deck with darkness energy. Junk Hunt allows us to get back 2 item cards, so just a very good card. And then one big major player in this deck is actually going to be Virizion EX. Verdant Wind, if your Pokemon have any grass energy attached to them, they can't be affected by any special conditions. This is huge against those Hypnotoxic Laser and Excelgor, right? Just one Virizion EX can stop those cards dead in their tracks. And thanks to this blend energy which provides both darkness and grass energy at the same time, hey, we get to move this around, and it also blocks special conditions when we have that Virizion EX in play. So Virizion EX really adds another layer to this deck, just making it much more resilient. So the goal here with this version of this deck is going to be avoiding one-hit knockouts. Virizion EX is our first line of defense against that. Now, unfortunately, Darkrai EX is weak to fighting, which Landorus EX is hitting pretty hard these days. And Yveltal EX is weak to lightning, which means Raichu and Thundurus EX both hit this pretty hard. So we're going to take a different route. We're actually going to try to use the card Shadow Circle to take away our weakness. Each Pokemon that has any darkness energy attached to it has no weakness. So as long as Shadow Circle stays in play, we're going to take away our own weakness and make it more difficult for our opponent to get those one-hit knockouts. And if they're not getting those one-hit knockouts, we should be winning pretty much every time. Why? Because we have Max Potion. So when we take a hit, we move the energy away with Hydreigon's Dark Trance, Max Potion, and then move the energy back. So it's just a pretty neat combo we have here. Hydreigon, Darkrai, and Max Potion. This triangle here makes the deck work. Right? So I'm not sure if this concept actually works, but it's something I've been wanting to try out. Seems pretty cool, and it seems like you can wear a lot of decks down with Max Potions and just Night Spears and Evil Balls. And as long as you're not getting knocked out in one hit over and over, you should be able to win eventually. At least that's what it seems like. For our supporters, we have 4 Professor Juniper, 4 N, 3 Colress, and 3 Skyla, along with 1 Lysander. And then we have the Dowsing Machine to recover an item card just in case. 2 Rare Candy, just to supplement our Hydreigon line. We do have a 3-1-3 line. I may want an extra Rare Candy in here, but we're sticking with 2 for now. We have 1 Level Ball and 3 Ultra Ball to search out our Pokemon. 2 Muscle Band to do some additional damage, 1 Super Rod to recover our Pokemon, and perhaps some basic energy sometimes, 3 Dark Patch just to get some energy out of the discard pile and accelerate our energy. We're only running 3 because we do have this regular Yveltal as some energy acceleration as well, so between these two, we should have enough, ways to get energy back out of the discard pile. Startling Megaphone is going to be very big against those Garbodor decks, which would otherwise shut down basically our entire deck. We can also Junk Hunt for that Startling Megaphone, so very handy to have more than one of these, access to them in a game. And I believe that is it. We just have 7 Darkness Energy and 4 of these Blend Energy. So everything kind of works in this deck, right? There's a nice synergy going on here. But it honestly revolves around Shadow Circle. A lot of decks that run Lightning Pokemon don't tend to have stadiums. The exception to that would be those Raichu decks that also run Burbank City Gym. But against those decks, we're going to try to win a stadium war with our Shadow Circle, a Dowsing Machine, and Sableye. If we can get rid of their stadiums eventually, stick that Shadow Circle in play, we should be able to overcome them with Dark Trance and Max Potion. I don't know, just a thought. I thought I would try it out. I've gone through pretty much every top deck in the format, so might as well venture into some other creative ideas. So, let's take a look at this deck in action on Pokemon TCG Online, revisiting a blast from the past, Darkrai Hydreigon. So I'm going to open up here. I have a choice between Darkrai and Sableye. It's actually an interesting choice, since you can't Junk Hunt going first. Sableye is a pretty weak opener, but I'm going to go ahead and start with it anyway, since starting with Darkrai just really isn't very good. We'll go ahead and bench that Darkrai EX, and I'm going to attach an energy just to the bench Darkrai, since I cannot Junk Hunt on the first turn. I draw a doozy of a hand here. I think I'm not looking good. I'm going to go ahead and bench that Yveltal EX, and pass the turn. No supporter in hand. Nothing to even Junk Hunt for. This is just an ugly, ugly start. After, we had an opening hand with a couple supporters. No, not so much. Alright, now it looks like we're going up against another dark deck, but this is going to be a Zoroark deck. Now this is going to be a much more aggressive deck. It's going to start to attack very quickly, try to take prizes through really big aggression. But I think if we can stabilize, eventually we should be able to make a nice comeback against this kind of a deck. They rely on getting those one-hit knockouts through Hypnotoxic Laser, and as long as we have Virizion EX to block those Hypnotoxic Laser, we should be good. I draw an Ultra Ball for the turn. I could, Ultra Ball for something, but I would have to discard some precious cards here that I don't really want to get rid of. So I think I may just attach and pass the turn. Pretty brutal turn here, but that's alright. Normally I would love to Ultra Ball away a Darkness Energy and, get things going with a Dark Patch, but since I don't have a Dark Patch, I don't have a supporter, I'm actually better off keeping the energy in my hand. And attaching that energy to Yveltal EX prepares me for an attack from a Zoroark. Right, if it gets 2 energy on it, a 2 energy Evil Ball responds with a nice knockout. So it seems to make sense. Alright, so we do have that Darkrai with the 1 energy on it, and the Zorua on the bench also has energy. There is a Dark Patch. So my opponent can power up that Zorua and potentially get Zoroark into play. If, looks like second energy going on to the Zorua. I would assume a Zoroark is soon to come. And there is the Ultra Ball, discarding DCE and Zorua. Looks like here comes the big bad Zoroark. So even with just 3 Pokemon and that Dark Claw, it'll do enough to knock out Sableye with Brutal Bash. There we do see a Bicycle for 4. I was fortunate that my opponent had to end me, since now I do have a full hand to work with once again. Got some supporters back, and now maybe this will be a better game. So, here comes Zoroark, and yes, we'll probably see the Brutal Bash for the knockout. Down goes Sableye, but we will have an easy response to the Zoroark. Just, a nice Evil Ball and a knockout. Now I draw a Skyla for the turn. I could Skyla or Juniper here. Juniper would be not a bad move just to get some more cards here, since using Skyla for a single card isn't really doing a whole lot here. But you know what? I decide my opponent really can't knock me out next turn. It would take a ridiculous combination of cards. I mean, we would need to see Dark Patch, DCE, Laser, Virbank. That's a lot of stuff to have to knock me out, especially after a Dark Patch is gone, and a DCE is gone, and a Dark Claw is gone. So I'm just going to go ahead and Level Ball for the Dino, Evil Ball for the knockout, and go from there. You know, if I survive the turn, things are looking pretty good. But just as I say that, there is a Virbank City Gym, and a random receiver hits the Professor Juniper. And go figure if Virzini X is actually in the prizes. Would have been nice to actually have that. That way I could be sure to block any hypnotoxic lasers. And, you know, survive whatever is thrown my way. I do see an energy going on to, looks like Yveltal EX. Now with that attachment, it seems like I probably should survive the turn. It would take a double Dark Patch and a laser and a Dark Claw or a Muscle Band at this point. We do see the hypnotoxic laser after, I believe, a bicycle. And here we see the Professor Juniper. So we'll have to wait and see. It is getting a little scary if we do see 2 Dark Patch and then a way to add 20 damage, either being the Dark Claw or the Muscle Band. I will get knocked out, and that'll be very devastating. I really don't like my odds if I get knocked out here. So this will be a big moment in this game. Again, we do see a lot of stuff in the discard pile already, but we see Dark Claw, second energy from that Dark Patch. If there's one more Dark Patch, we'll see an Evil Ball for 140 damage. The Laser and the Virbank will do the finishing 30. And my opponent will go from nothing to knockout. And that is just silly. And oh my goodness, there it is. It's going to happen. A computer search. That'll find a Dark Patch, I'm sure. I can't believe this just happened. What a ridiculous turn from my opponent. Getting all that stuff and, a full HP Yveltal EX with just 2 energy against, my opponent only had 1 Darkrai with an energy on it. And I'm going to get knocked out. There is something very, very wrong with that. Oh well. Alright, so we're going to have to try to find some way to respond at this point, as Yveltal EX does knock out my own Yveltal EX. Boo! That's not cool. And my opponent will take 2 prizes and take the lead. Now, the bright side here is I do have that Virzini EX now, so we have that to work with. Did top deck a Blend Energy, pretty annoying. I'll have to discard one of those with the Juniper. I have a decision on where to attach this energy. I may attach to the active, but that just makes Darkrai a bigger target for Evil Ball. I'm actually going to attach to the bench Virzini EX, since if I get a Hydreigon out, I would be able to just move it around anyway, so not a big deal. And if I miss big this turn, I'm actually going to retreat to that Virzini EX, knowing it has the blend on it, cannot be lasered, and thus cannot really be knocked out in one hit. So we're going to promote the Virzini EX here, retreat into Darkrai, Dark Patch onto it, and wow, that is a pretty ugly hand, isn't it? Yeah, that's just not good. Ugh. So things not going our way this game whatsoever. The big knockout really did turn the tide of this game. You know, if it would have just been an Evil Ball and a big amount of damage, I wouldn't have been too upset. We could have gotten, you know, the Virizion down with the blend on the Yveltal, taking away the poison. Things would have been just fine, I think. But man, that knockout just sets me back so far. I lose my energy, lose 2 prizes, and there's just so much pressure on at this point. Really not much room for error at this point, which is a bad thing when you look at my hand and see, okay, we don't have much to work with. So I'm really hoping to top deck something good next turn. Really, really need something. Not sure what that something is, but we're going to need something. So we see an Ultra Ball for another Zoroark at this point. At least I know my Virzini EX probably won't get knocked out. And yes, we do see a Y Cyclone at least comforting me there, knowing, yes, I did survive the turn, so there's that. And there is a Skyla, so I did top deck something, but Skyla is just a little slow at this point. I mean, I need something better than a Skyla here. This is just kind of frustrating. I mean, I can Skyla for a supporter, but then if I do that, if I Night Spear with that Darkrai, I could be in Evil Ball range with a Hypnotoxic Laser, and that's just bad. So I would actually like to Skyla for Ultra Ball here, but if I do that, then I just don't have a supporter. So it just seems like no matter what I do, it doesn't seem like a good position to be in. I will go ahead and Skyla for the Ultra Ball, though, and we're going to take a bit of a risk, alright? Might as well go for it. Let's grab the Ultra Ball. Yeah, grabbing a supporter just seems too slow. The decision on what to discard here is actually a pretty big deal. I could discard... The Dino is for sure getting discarded, but after that, I decided to go with the Darkness Energy, thinking the Lysander is probably going to help, and I'm definitely going to need the Muscle Band at some point. Maybe discarding the Lysander instead of the Darkness Energy was the way to go, but being able to target something down just seems like such a big deal here. Now I have this Muscle Band. It's very tempting to put it down and Night Spear, but I'm actually going to hold on to it. You know, it could come up a little bigger later. Hitting for 90, I can then hit for 90 later on this Yveltal EX, so that could end up being big. I'm going to hit that Darkrai on the bench for 30. Reason being, if it comes out and uses Night Spear, I can actually put a Muscle Band onto Hydreigon and use Dragon Blast for 160 and finish it off. So that's going to be my plan here. Of course, I do need to draw an energy for that to happen, so maybe discarding the energy was a big mistake. But it just hurts so much to have to discard Lysander. It's just such a pretty card, and you know, bringing up something on the bench is such a big deal. We can always bring out that Yveltal EX and Night Spirit for a knockout, so I don't know. Maybe it was for the best to discard it there, though. Now we do see another Pal Pad from my opponent. He has played so many Juniper this game, actually down to 3 cards in his deck before that Pal Pad, so burning through a ridiculous amount of resources in this game. Obviously, it's worked out very well for him. It's a very aggressive deck, so he's been able to put on tons and tons of pressure. We have been able to stabilize a little bit, but we are lacking any sort of supporters or draw power at this point, you know. Colress here would be big. A Juniper would be big here. I mean, even drawing a Dowsing Machine to get a supporter would be pretty big here. So we could get a Max Potion and start healing off those Pokemon. And that would be pretty big. Here comes my opponent's Darkrai EX for the Night Spear. And there's going to be a big top deck. Oh, I actually did draw the Darkness Energy. That is a huge top deck for the turn. Now I'll be able to actually Dragon Blast that Darkrai for a knockout. And I feel like I have 2 options here. Number 1 is Lysander out the Yveltal EX and knock it out. Number 2 is just Muscle Band and knock out the active Darkrai. And going after the Darkrai honestly seems like the better move to me right now. Because if my opponent had a Lysander or a Pokemon Catcher, or heck, even, well, not an Escape Rope, but Lysander or a Pokemon Catcher could bring out one of my benched EXs that already has a ton of damage on it, and then a 3-prize Night Spear can end the game just like that. So I'm pretty worried about that. And just doing the math here, if I use Dragon Blast with the Muscle Band, it will be a knockout, and then I'll discard 2 energy. So I'll bring myself down to 2 energy. So right now, with 2 energy on my active, 2 energy on the Yveltal EX, Evil Ball's doing 100. It needs to do 150 to knock out Hydreigon. And Virizion EX's Verdant Wind will block Hypnotoxic Laser. So my opponent needs a DCE and a Muscle Band in order to knock out Hydreigon with Evil Ball. Now, granted, if he can pull that off, I have pretty much lost the game. I don't think I can win if that happens. But that is so difficult to pull off, especially considering this is a Zoroark deck, right? There's 2 Dark Claw in the discard pile, along with a Computer Search. Most Zoroark decks do run Silver Bangle, as well as Dark Claw or Muscle Band, so I might think my opponent is out of Dark Claw. And even if he does have both a Double Colorless and a Dark Claw left, he'll have to have both in hand. And there's not many supporters that can fetch him those things without, you know, him decking out. He only has 4 cards left in his deck at this point, so I'm taking a big risk here, leaving the Hydreigon out there, but I think I have to take this risk at this point. It's going to be really tough for my opponent to get a knockout at this point. You know, he's used so many resources, and there we go, Evil Ball for 100, so a big surviving turn there for that Hydreigon, and now we're going to have a huge opportunity to come back in this game. Alright, so I did draw Dowsing Machine for the turn. I could play that here, and I don't really know what to get back. I could get a Dark Patch, could get a Max Potion. We do have that Colress now that can draw a bunch of cards. I'm actually really not sure which one to get, so I may hold off on the Dowsing Machine and actually just use Super Rod and then Colress for 8. And then maybe if I redraw the Dowsing Machine, I can decide which one I want. So let's go ahead and Super Rod, shuffling in 2 Darkness Energy and Yveltal EX. Colress for a massive 8 cards. And we did get another Darkrai EX, so that was big to get a fresh attacker out there that doesn't have any damage on it. Weren't able to get a Max Potion, but who needs it? We'll just put up a new Darkrai. Retreat for free. Dark Trance the energy up to the active. And here we go, Night Spear, and all of a sudden, after this knockout, we will be down to a single prize. So what a swift turnaround this was. You know, we had that huge knockout, we were down a bunch of prizes, and just like that, Hydreigon, Dark Trance, moving energy around, we've managed to close the gap down to just 1 prize at this point. And it seems like victory is in reach. Now, we can still lose. You know, if my opponent gets some insane turn with getting a Darkrai powered up and a Catcher or a Lysander, could see a 3 prize turn from a Night Spear. I was not able to prevent that. But with that DCE on the Zoroark, seems a little unlikely. And at this point, it seems like we are in great shape to win, and my opponent does say GG. Brutal Bash is going to hit for 130 damage, and that's going to be it. We can just Night Spear the bench Zorua for the game. Could Lysander, could Dark Trance, and Dragon Blast. We'll just do the simplest thing here. Night Spear, hit the Zorua on the bench for the game, and whoof, our Darkrai Hydreigon deck manages to take the victory against this Zoroark deck. So it's kind of a crazy game, kind of a fun game, against differing kinds of dark decks. Neither of them very standard. You know, Zoroark not too popular. Neither is Hydreigon anymore. So definitely an interesting game between 2 unusual decks at this point. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will certainly have some more for you soon. I am Puka from the Top Cut, and I will see you guys next time.